Okay, as Guy mentioned, this final session is focused on building the telco AI ecosystem. How does the sector engage with and develop the telco AI ecosystem? What new partnership models and relationships can we expect to see? So let's meet our panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly. So if we can start at the far end with Rahul, and just remember to lean in, switch on those microphones and lean in. That'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, this is Rahul. I head Rakuten Symphony India Operations and OSS Business Unit. Being the seed member of Rakuten Mobile inception in Japan 2018, and right now I'm leading the expansion of the business on the OSS, which is a combination of telco life cycle management and a lot of more.
Hi everybody, my name is Amit. I'm part of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I'm, I think, the odd bird here. I'm actually not a technologist. I'm an account executive driving a few telco accounts globally.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Murphy. I am Head of Transformation at BT Group. Current responsibility is the closure of BT Tower, and through that I get to drive loads of innovative capabilities across data, AI, lots of different things in order to then shut our network and simplify it at scale. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeet. I'm the Global Business Head of AI for Tech Mahindra. So in my role, I'm responsible for all the business functions, business development, sales, marketing, partnerships and alliances across all the verticals globally. And that gives me a ringside view of how ecosystems come together across different industries. So really looking forward to this discussion and sharing learnings of what I've seen work elsewhere in other industries. So what to do and more importantly, what not to do. Looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Jeet. So as with the other sessions, we've given our speakers the opportunity to take up to 5 minutes to share some of their thoughts on the topic to start off. So we're going to start with Rahul. So you can do it from your seat there or up here, your choice.
Why do I be the lucky one?
Do you want to come up here?
I and Jeet were betting that will be the first one. For me, I think most of the things which works for all of us is the use cases and business case, why we're going to do some things. The same goes for AI. And when we talk about use cases, we're also talking about the ROI and measurability. It's not about decreasing or reducing the number of people, but actually being able to measure the efficiency. Also believe that there's a lot of data. We talk about data, not the value, but as telcos, we're very proud of having more data. I don't think that should be the case. We should be talking about the value which comes out of data. I mean, TBs of data not getting us more revenue or optimization means nothing. Just storage buckets and somebody's making revenue out of it, of the compute resources which they're buying. Apart from that, we also need to learn from our parents in case of the IT world. They don't talk about standards so much. They don't talk about RIC. They don't talk about orchestration. They don't talk about the complex topics. All they talk about is AI ops, ML ops, and being able to solve the problems with even the business rules and RPA in their terms. I personally believe that in terms of ecosystem, use cases, measurability is the key. Sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solution. You can actually solve it by a business rule. It doesn't have to be AI. Sometimes it is more about closed loop, and most of the times, if you're looking into AI, the part of it can come through. Second, I believe that the partnership is the most important thing. You need to find incentives for everyone. If you're having a partner, they also need to win, not only you. If you're going to save money, become efficient, the partner also need to make some money. Otherwise, it becomes one way. And the most successful, magical partnerships happen when everyone has a buy-in, everyone gets something out of it. You also need to decide you are a build versus buy organization. In Rakuten Symphony, we believe that we are a build organization. We love to build tools, platforms, capabilities, and that keeps us humble, nimble, ahead of curve. I can talk in depth of the technology because I'm too much into detail and actually tell you that AI is not that magical, which we all believe it to be. It's really complex. On the other side, if you are buying, then you need to even depend more on the partner. Who's the right partner? Maybe start with the infrastructure if you want to. or you buy in from a hyperscaler, public cloud, the model and the infrastructure, and don't worry about it. Some of the successful partnerships have taken that route. On the use cases, it can start, I mean, if you Google today, only 4 use cases will come across: customer experience, network planning, blah, blah, blah. But please get into details of what we really want to achieve. Partnerships critical, infrastructure critical, but in the end, models also have 2 ways of looking at it. People are talking about open source, people are talking about closed loop. A lot of us started the AI journey or a Gen AI journey with OpenAI, but in the end, who's winning? I think we need to look into what Facebook is able to do with Llama, and truly believe in telecom will be looking at small language models more than the large language models. Large language models probably would be the intent broker where you interact, talk to them, try to make them understand what kind of use case, who you are. You can be a NOC person, you can be a business exec. The language models are perfect to understand your intent. You can train them, brag, and a lot more. But the actual work or the closed loop would be done by the small language model, which might be sitting at different brackets of your network. Maybe a small language model which will be monitoring radio, and which only take a decision whether this radio can support a slice or not. A small language model which will monitor a DWDM or the transport network. A small language model which will also monitor a core network. And in the end, when you talk to the intent management layer, these all agents might talk to each other and bring the RCA across. Data is very important. We can start with the simplest thing. Today, we are totally dependent on what OEMs provide as fault libraries and performance matrices. If you get the access to system log, the AIs can generate your fault libraries, which makes sense for your topology, your network, and your way of working. You don't have to depend on somebody to give you a fault or performance matrices. As simple as this. A simple language model can help you with this with 6 months of data and other things. We really believe that the world will move to a lot of agentification. Service as software will come true. And we all have to also believe that the standards will not tell us what the right culture and organization would be. We need to define your business goals, KPIs, what you want to achieve with AI or not AI or automation. But the organization will take it forward each day. Currently, the way we are placed, our organization would not work. And there are too many silos. If a CMO or marketing guy, sales guy, technology guy, CEO cannot see at one data at one time to take one decision, something is really wrong. They'll manipulate the data and come back with their business logics to get decisions in terms of budgeting and others, and that's where we all lose in the end. And I think it's a wonderful way to have common data platforms, common data marts, common data governance, and do a lot of ML on top of it to recognize patterns and create your use cases. We believe that telco and IT has to become one. The CIO, CTO, CXOs have to become one, and then the right organization structure can evolve. I also personally believe that network builds can happen through automation, monetization can happen through ML, and operations should happen from some small language models and intent broker with AI. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Okay, Rahul covered a lot of ground there, a lot of interesting insights and thoughts there. So thanks for that. I think, Laura, we're going to have you up next. So you're going to come up to the podium because you have a visual. Oh, no, you can do it. You can do it there. If you want to do it there, that's that's absolutely fine. Yeah, you have. But you have a visual aid with you today.
I do have a visual aid.
There we go.
There we go. Very pretty slide. Good afternoon, everyone. In kick-starting my slot off, I wanted to start with an exploration of ecosystem in its broadest possible sense, right? Because if we're going to scale the deployment of this technology from pilot to return on investment to competitive advantage, then really it is my firm belief that each one of these pillars is going to have to shift, i.e. people, process, ways of working, technology, and culture all have to shift holistically in tandem. Otherwise, not one of them shifts, right? And so I think throughout the day, we've talked about various different elements of this. We talked about the importance of leadership and kind of, board buy-in. A previous panelist spoke on that. We talked about change management or organizational readiness, I think, was the phrase that was used. We've talked about partnerships, obviously large kind of emphasis on data quality, structuring data, governance data, architecture of data, augmentation of data, the difficulties with kind of huge volumes of data, et cetera, talked about tooling, talked about infrastructure, but really it's actually all of those in combination that are going to get you the kind of jump from, say, transactional to transformational, right? And so actually, but if I was to pick one of these pillars, which for me would be fundamental to the others, it's really the creation of a generative culture, no pun intended. And in that, I'm using the definition of generative culture versus bureaucratic culture that's kind of quite widely held and quite widespread, because whilst that's a somewhat artificial definition, time and time again, it is pointed out in literature the importance of a organizational culture with low levels of hierarchy, high levels of psychological safety, high levels of trust, high levels of collaboration across teams, across organizational units, in order to drive that horizontal kind of culture that Chris Holmes was speaking about, that gets you the creativity, that gets you the problem solving, that gets you the innovation, that gets you the application of these tools to kind of actual problems in your organization that are acted as blockers to value. So I'd really highlight that one in particular. Also then, of course, that generative culture can extend beyond your organization into partnerships with vendors and system integrators and academia and research. Again, we had an emphasis on that earlier in the day. And, we've got interesting examples of BT on kind of partnerships with academia. The climate resilience tool is a nice example of actually where we've kind of partnered with the University of Cambridge and with government, and with indeed cross-sector infrastructure suppliers to give a model of kind of the impact of flooding on, critical national infrastructure, et cetera. So really nice examples there. And underpinning all of that for me, again, back to Lord Holmes's talk on ethics, right? Actually just in kind of interacting with teams, how are we using this technology? Are we using it to empower and enable? We've got I was really actually struck by his example of IVF, right? I was reflecting on that with him over lunchtime. I was like, that's really interesting, right? Because with IVF, you've got a mechanism for both the ongoing evolution of that technology and its distribution through the NHS, right? And actually, what's our answer in the telco space for that kind of democratic creation and kind of ongoing kind of distribution of this technology, right? And we were kind of having a good conversation on that, but the onus of everybody in this room and beyond to make sure that this is a technology that empowers and enables, right, and that can drive social mobility in that way, and could drive the wider kind of purpose of connecting for good that he referenced. So, yeah, those are the key points that I wanted to bring up.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And Jeet, do you want to come up here or?
I think I will.
Okay.
Mum was a teacher and my father was a lawyer, so I'm genetically inclined to stand and speak. But thank you. I think we've covered a lot of the topics, and I thought I'll just take this time to give you a perspective of how we can think about the ecosystem. And Laura, showed you one view. So let me look at what an ecosystem is, right? So you define it in the typical way of all of these personas. So you've got your competitors, internal stakeholders, partners, vendors, et cetera, and what unifies this ecosystem? You've got regulators as well, but what unifies an ecosystem is the drive to create value. And Rahul touched upon that, where he said, he spoke about ROI and measurement and all of that. So at the end of the day, you have the one thing that rules them all, which is the desire to drive value. Now, when you look at how this value is derived, right? So I wanted to look at 3 mental models that I want to keep. It's like, as Charlie Munger says, quote hooks on which we can hang our ideas. The first is think of the ecosystem as platforms on one side, use cases on the other. You've got the integrators who bring this all together, and all of this is being done for the enterprise because that's whom we're serving. And essentially, if you look at it, in the business, you are looking at companies which are platforms, so you have the hyperscalers, and companies who have made it their life's mission to really double down on a niche use case and be the best of that. And I think as integrators, what we do is we understand that magic happens when you have data science, domain, and the enterprise context. So AI is all over the place, and like I said, I look at AI across all verticals globally, but context is really important. And the way I kind of explain it to people is, even in the retail industry, dressing has a very different context if you're a clothing company versus whether you're Tesco, right? It's salad dressing or whatever. And a lot of the work that's happening now is about getting this general purpose technology fit for the industry to start with, and then for your enterprise in particular. Again, Rahul spoke about small language models or domain language models, and we're working with logistics companies, with a few telcos, which is essentially looking at how do we train or fine-tune an LLM to make it understand the lingo of my industry to start with, and then my particular company. So I think in terms of how this ecosystem comes together, again, domain, data science, and the enterprise context is very important. And, well, selfishly, integrators like ourselves play an important role, because while you have the platforms and the use cases, and the kind of example I'd like to, and my hyperscaler friends wouldn't agree, but it's almost a case of being a mile wide and an inch deep in case of the platforms. Yes, they have domain-specific use cases, but they've not really doubled down into it. And then you have use case companies which are solving for one particular problem. And again, Rahul mentioned, right, there are 3 or 4 primary use cases that we're doubling down on. And you'll hear a lot about autonomous networks and intent-driven network and whatever. And we keep finding new terminology. But essentially what it is, when you look at any of these objectives, you're essentially going to break that down, saying, right, it's an autonomous network or an intent-driven network. That really breaks down to a number of small use cases. And that's what some of these use case companies are solving. And it'll be interesting to see and discuss how different parts of these players in the ecosystem all come together to, like I said, rally behind the unifying principle of creating value. Thank you.
Really interesting, really interesting. So as we've done before, I just want to come to the audience and see if there's any initial questions. But if not, I think there's some. Okay, no hands up. Okay. Is your mic on?
I'm interested in, it hasn't really been touched upon here, but how important is a change in the procurement model to actually creating a viable ecosystem? We've been currently doing a lot of research in terms of open source initiatives in telco, and a lot of it is about how do you build a community rather than seeing it as an opportunity to get something for free or that is sustainable. How much do we does the panel think the ecosystem needs to have a change in procurement attitude within telcos, within the vendors, etc., to make that ecosystem for AI sustainable in telco?
Yep. Yeah.
So hi. First of all, a change is needed, 100%. So if I'm looking at what we are doing, and again, I'm an account executive, so I manage a relationship with the customers, telco customers globally. So my view of looking at those things is, first of all, we need to understand that those guys have a strategy of what they want to acquire, what they want to build, and how they want to build it. And we, as a company, provide them the choice how to consume it and how to get it from the ecosystem. Then comes the point of how do I implement it, because I need to build it, I need to run it, and that's where procurement comes in, and all the other processes, and those are usually very, let's call them old-fashioned, okay? They did not evolve. We are still in the same, put me the number of the part in the same Excel, and if it doesn't fit, come with another Excel that will fit to it. So having the ability of using the ecosystem to change the models, the way telcos are consuming and building their own ecosystem to provide value, to just, it's for me fundamental to be successful in the AI area.
Yeah, Jeet.
Yeah, let me tell you two stories relevant to this, right? So I think it was November 22nd, 2022, when ChatGPT launched. I remember that because my life has changed after that. But just after that, board meetings were happening in January, and we were getting a lot of requests and saying, let's do Gen AI. And we did a lot of, POCs. We did a lot of work in the field services area. And one of the things that you do in field services is, when you go out and do network planning, etc., you have this massive booklet that, your field engineers have to read to be able to plan, etc. And we said, look, all of this knowledge can be codified. We'll put it into a Gen AI system. You can query in natural language, asking about, is there a health hazard? Where should I plan? What do I do, etc., etc. So all of those 70 pages gets condensed for you, easy peasy. We did a POC, worked brilliantly, but we realized that, and this is the problem, right? And this is where procurement steps in. We said, it works fantastically, but when you put it into production, and we were using OpenAI APIs at that time, and we said, look, the cost is prohibitive. Yes, we will get some efficiency, but the cost of running this, it just doesn't make sense. Again, back to the point that Rahul started with of saying ROI and measurement. So when we, and this is how procurement is changing, right? So first there was a straight off, no, the business case doesn't stack up. But you then went back and said, right, this solution is essentially made up of bits. So you've got some which is simple querying, some which is document summarization. So you've got sheets and sheets of paper, and you just want to summarize that. And we said you do not need to use, and there are some places where you've got maps and stuff, so there's visual Q&A as well. And you don't need to necessarily use OpenAI everywhere. There are open source alternatives which can do as good a job of summarization, if not better in some cases. So we then built a solution which said, right, we've got what we call, and we were one of the first in the industry to launch a software asset which allowed experimentation. So we said, look, bring in your use case, use different models which are paid and open source, find out what's fit for purpose, and then take these little building blocks and build that big solution, which would then pass muster from procurement or any other perspective. So I think, what this example is showing is there is going to be an element of sticker shock, and that has happened. And what people are going to look for is how do you take that solution and really look at alternatives, and those building blocks can be a combination of COTS and open source.
Just a lot of things needs to be changed on the procurement process side. Very simple example, the RACI matrices mentioned on that contracts need to change into liabilities and rewards. A lot of things in this case will be multiple partners, so it might come to a point where they'll have joint IP ownerships. Right now it doesn't work that way. It's all about you have to satisfy these SLAs, and we'll play this role and you'll play this role. So it has to work on the different matrices altogether. A lot of them would probably have joint AI models posted on Hugging Face, where somebody like TechM works with Symphony, works with hyperscaler, will come up with a model which is fine-tuned for telco for specific use case. All those things needs to change, and how do you reward and also make people liable for the end results? All these needs to be thought through. I mean, there are a lot of processes which goes through, and I think the whole model will change because it becomes a joint ownership in case you are buying it or building it with partners and the ecosystem. Apart from that, we can still go into more details about how the procurement works and should work, but this will need a lot of evolution.
can I? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I
Rahul.
just
Yeah.
second everything that everybody said, but also just build on the ultimate choice of where you sit in that value chain, right? It's going to come down to speed of delivery, i.e. the extent to which you need to partner is kind of, driven a large part by time, and also scale, right? In terms of actually, we've talked about skill shortage in this kind of area, right? That's an obvious thing as well.
Okay. And I'd like to ask all the members of the panel, given their different perspectives and experiences and relationships internally and externally, whether you think that an AI champion is needed at a telecom operator to be able to create an internal ecosystem and also manage the external ecosystem as well. And without that, is there a danger you could just have lots of people doing lots of different things and not knowing what everybody else is doing? To what extent do you need somebody leading the push in south? Because we heard culture eats strategies. We've heard today, but heard in the past as well. We've also heard suggestions that there's inertia within the network operators, and maybe the innovation DNA has fallen away. Is AI a chance to get people fired up again, but under the guide of an AI champion? So, Laura, maybe we can start with you on that.
It's a great question. There's a joke in an ex-consultancy forum that I belong to saying, in order to sound really smart, you say, it depends. It depends. Yes, I think there's certainly a role for champions, centre of excellence, so on and so forth, to really drive out those horizontal streams of value across an organisation. If you have a kind of central team or a central champion that sits, above or, alongside those kind of organisational building blocks that can cut across them, there's certainly a very useful role for that in terms of driving those horizontal end-to-end patterns of value. So it really depends on what you're deploying the tool for, right? Because we've heard about call center, augmentation of agents. We've heard about network operations. We've heard about, field operations. We've heard about personal productivity. And I think in a number of those spaces, you can see how, a central team driving that end-to-end value chain, enabling scaled kind of return on investment with particular partners, enabling a consistent deployment of those tools in kind of standardized guardrails, does a lot of good within an organization, in terms of individual productivity, in terms of, summarizing my own meeting notes, maybe less so. But then again, that's a standard tool that's been employed at scale, in order to drive that, a value economy, right? So, yes, I think in conclusion, I'd probably agree. There is definitely a role for that.
Okay. Amit, do you want to come in? Because I definitely want to ask
I might
Rahul.
a bit challenge Laura between what should be done and what is actually possible. Because telcos, like many other organizations, are built in silos. And when it comes to P&L ownership and this use case, everyone would like to have his own. So would we like to have somebody to be kind of the center of excellence of AI? 100% with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that organization, and that's the culture issue, will be able to do it, not in the short term. They are struggling today with things which are more simple than that. So I do think that there needs to be somebody there to kind of manage it in some way or another. But I would be looking into at least 3 different types of center of excellences in the organization. One, to look at the external, kind of how do I use it in the B2B, how do I provide an offering. One for more the internal on the networking side maybe. So you will have a collaboration, you will have a team, but I don't think one is realistic.
If I could respond. We're getting good debate on the panel. I would agree, right? In terms of actually, given where organizations are right now, it's how you actually aggregate those internal domain knowledge, right? And I think actually in terms of deployment of tools at scale and the aggregation of that and actually building from those internal domains to bring those teams together, that's hard to do without a kind of central orchestration role, right? So you're probably looking at a evolving model, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Actually, where you take it from in-unit to cross-unit, basically, as you start to kind of build your own knowledge of the technology. And again, how you up from pilots to, tackling processes within an organization to, replacing those processes within an organization and then going across organization and to do that. They're all different stages, I think, probably. And you're all going to be at different points, right? Concurrently. That's the interest. That's the, challenge of it, I guess.
And Rahul, if I can ask you as well, because you're obviously in a almost unique situation where you're trying to become that ecosystem partner, but you have the experience of a company that at Rakuten Mobile that always talked about AI as a core part of the whole culture and technology rollout from the beginning. So
I think about that poor guy who has the KPI for ANization, right? I personally believe, and what worked for Rakuten when we were launching the network was that one guy had the authority, autonomy, and the budget to take decisions. To say that, yes, we're going to do it only the automation way, and there's no plan B. And when things used to come as problems, it used to come to me and say, can you do it in-house? Even with the support of partners, if yes, then do it. We'll not go outsource this to somebody else or will not buy a new tool. If that is the autonomy and authority and budget you have, then surely somebody can play that advocate because there are enough smart people who can be the chief AI officer. But if not this kind of centralization in terms of budget, authority, autonomy, then everyone should have the target. Because without that autonomy, you're going to add one more layer, and that poor guy will have KPIs for everyone else. And I'm very sure others would not support because others would have their own budget and they'll buy their own tools and they'll have their favorite partners to work with. And everyone will create an AI platform. And everyone would want to eat away somebody else's platform. So take the call to have one platform and one team to drive it. Worked very well for us when we had one platform, one data lake, one automation kind of platform. And then everyone used to come to me as internal customers, and I used to solve their problems, solve their problems, and always thinking about what is the best way and efficient way. And you can actually use a lot of open source, and you can actually reuse for a lot of use cases because people just want to see UI. People just want to see those green boxes getting checked up. They don't care under the hood you're using Activity or Camunda or any Zigbee or any other workflow engine. So yeah, I mean, if you're giving me all the budget, I'll take the role.
So, and the reason I ask that question is because that must make managing the ecosystem and what you need sort of, simpler than if you've got a company that's been around for 100 years and has still got lots of networks, lots of legacy, and is trying to push forward with new technologies and new processes, cloud-native processes as well. It must be really difficult. So, Jeet, I want to ask you, I mean, you're obviously a company that a lot of network operators engage with and is probably an important part of any technology ecosystem. How are you seeing these AI ecosystems develop within the telco sphere?
Yeah, so look, I think, and I'll link it a bit with the earlier question, right? In my view, do you need an AI champion? Yes. But that AI champion, and wherever we've seen that success, right, is usually the CEO or someone at the very top who's leading the strategy for the company. And that person really has to believe that this is the future, this is where this is what the company will pivot on. Once you've got that, you will then empower, again, like Rahul said, have that one unit which has the mandate from the CEO to drive and infuse AI across the organization. Because look, you have to infuse it across the organization or it doesn't work, because otherwise you do POCs and that's where it'll be at. Because if you've got to scale it at an enterprise level, different parts of the organization need to come together. Now, again, and I'll give you stories so that you can relate to it. We do what are called collaborative value discovery workshops. That's a lot of consultant jargon, but you've got to make it sound sophisticated and interesting. But what it is essentially a group of people coming together and saying, right, tell me about your process. What is it that you do? I referred earlier to the quote hook of data science or AI and then domain, right? So I'm a data science or an AI expert, but I want to come and talk to you guys about, help me understand what is this process? What do you guys do, right? And then as I take notes, I then engage and try to figure out and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you can apply this automation somewhere, or computer vision can help you out, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is, again, one of the largest telcos in this region. We're sitting down and trying to figure out how do we reduce field service cost, right? It's a big part of the P&L. It's a drag. We've got to build out fiber, but beyond the urban centers, it's not very profitable. So what do we do? And then we looked at where is money being spent. So a lot of money is spent on surveys. And then we said, right, how do you take cost out of surveys using AI? So someone would have said, like I said, use technology to codify all that knowledge. But the first one, and this was way before Gen AI, this was, I think 7 years ago, someone came up with the problem and said, you know what, we're spending a lot of money to reconcile physical inventory, because the data is out of whack. It's been so many years, like you said, it's been around for decades, and we don't know our telephone poles, whether they match with what's in the system. And then, right, what do? We've got a surveyor who goes out and, has a readout and says, right, I'm near Laura's house. There should be a telephone pole here. Yes, there is tick, or no, there isn't cross. And I'll send that back and someone will update the system. And then someone in that meeting said, hey, our physical inventory system, against each of the assets has a 6-digit Google grid reference number, Street View grid reference. We could plug that into an API. It'll shoot up 6 different images of that particular location. And you can train a computer model to draw bounding boxes, find out if a telephone pole exists, distinguish it from an electric pole because of the head end will be different on an electricity pole versus a telephone pole, et cetera, et cetera. And what would have taken a couple of years to do, and X million pounds, gets done in 2 weeks. But the team then, and this comes back to the culture element, right? Now, this team is now saying, whoa, this thing works. We're onto something here. And then they said, right, what else do you do? Right? You've got a technology that can see. And then someone came up with saying, every time we do a installation, we do a random sampling and send someone over to do an audit check, because we don't want a wrong installation and customer experience to drop. But conversely, if Jeet's just gone and installed provisioned Laura's broadband connection, and then Amit then says, you know what, I'm going to come and do an audit. Laura's like, all right, now I've got to hang around to wait for another person. And we said, can we train a mobile app to take a picture of that installation, check where the Phillips screws are in the right place, blah, 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 and then give you a certain amount of confidence on whether that installation is done well or not. And they put that into production, works well, reduces the number of visits, customer experience goes up, and now people are really excited, right? So they're like, whoa, all right, what next? And I think the reason I'm telling you the story is you start with something very simplistic, but I think it's not about, so we started about the champion. So you've got a champion who is the CEO, empowers Rahul with unlimited budget. But after that, you've got to have the mission of converting everyone in the company by showing them value again and making everyone an AI evangelist and a believer, because again, that's the only way it works.
Okay.
Every day.
Any questions or points from the floor before I...
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, okay, we've got, yes.
Should I go first?
Yep.
So thank you so much. Everybody spoke about the ecosystem partners and demand and supply. My question is, whom do you think, Laura, from your perspective, is the right ecosystem player to come and deal with your lead from that side? See, what's going to happen is that everybody will come, so hyperscalers, application companies, use case vendors, and at the end, what will happen is that we'll end up creating vertical siloed AIs. So what is that one company you believe, or one ecosystem player who is the best fitted to come and initiate a discussion with an operator and lead from the front? Is it SI? Is it hyperscaler or a use case company? What's your view?
It's a rhetorical question, Gaurav. It's you. It's the. It's
I'm from TechM, by the way. I
Yeah,
don't want to say
which
that
is why
in
I'm
as many
saying-
words. I want to hear from
But-
BT company directly. Is it TechM to come forward or a platform fair, maybe?
I think it really it depends, right? If you're gonna, because there are numerous different use cases in an organisation that's as complicated as BT, right? And
Yep.
so, therefore, in order to drive economies of scale, you are looking at a major player in order to, if you are going to drive that economy of scale across the organisation, right? However, there are also niche products out there. There are internally developed products, according to exactly the question that you're after. So I think it can't really be reduced to one simple answer.
You'll have multiple people talking to you and obviously reading it from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neil and then Mark.
I just think it's interesting. We've heard the word CEO. I tell you, the last person I ever went to see about technology when I worked at BT was the CEO. My proudest moment was getting hauled up for working with a company that some other company complained about. We also mentioned the word culture. I think everyone should replace the word culture with leadership, because you get the leadership, you get the culture your leadership gives you. And too often we're pointing the challenge at the people who do the work. If we don't empower those people to do AI or new technologies, then we don't really have engineers. And if we don't have engineers, we're probably not in business. So having a central ideas department is probably the worst thing that you could probably do. You need to have a team that's ready and healthy for the future, that feels it can spend some of its time investing in learning and continuing to learn on a lifestyle basis. And if you've got procurement making decisions, leave that company right away, is my advice, because they're going nowhere. The people who are the experts, and this is the thing that we in telco do not get at all. If you don't understand who your experts are in the subject matter that you've got, you are in super, super trouble. And we see it in so many companies where one person leaves or another person moves on, and you get massive kind of issues with, wait a minute, we've suddenly got a gap here, and how do we fill that gap? It's all about the people doing the work on the shop floor, in the field, in front of laptops, typing away. Those are the people that make a difference here. And if you don't empower them to learn this stuff and drive it, by default, no one should be saying, hey, we're going to start an AI project. They should be coming to you and say, hey, Neil, we built this thing with AI. What do you think? And that's the sort of environment we need to have. And it goes back to Darryl's point, which I super agree with, on innovation and empowerment of that innovation. It's a big issue that we've got a gap there. I see it. I go and talk to telcos, and I kind of want to grab them and shake them, because, like, for God's sake, guys, they're waiting for this decision or they're waiting for this RFI. It's like, just do it. And the more you're doing, the more you're learning, the quicker you'll learn from it, and the quicker you'll get a successful outcome, in my experience at least.
Oh, sorry, Chris and then Mark. I think Mark, yeah.
I wanted to ask a question primarily for the systems integrators on the panel. Obviously, as LLM gain more capabilities, they can start call APIs, use tools, in a way, find their way around the enterprise to get some goal achieved, right? So in a way, they discover the workflows, and the use of applications becomes less prominent, right? You don't need that so much, if you like, if you have these LLM capabilities. How do you see your business evolving? Because obviously a lot of your manpower, a lot of your efforts is about application development, application support, application maintenance. If that sort of goes away in a way, because actually AI in a way can discover the flows, can call the APIs, can do a lot of work. I mean, I hear next year probably you can operate a PC and OpenAI, Google work on these models, right? Can operate a computer, right? That removes the need for all of the work you've been doing on applications for so many years, right? How would that impact your place in the ecosystem, or how do you see it from your perspective of, changing your business?
Yeah, okay. So I think, look, yes, it is going to drive efficiency in the ecosystem, and we're happy to kind of champion that cause of efficiency and pass it on to our customers. So that happens for sure. Now, when you talk about, look, when you're doing this transition, right, so you spoke about what you're referring to is essentially an agentic future, which is, again, Rahul and I were talking about. You're going to talk about agents, agentic frameworks, which are going to use SLMs and be able to do a lot of the work that you had human beings do. And is that going to drive efficiency in the system? Yes. Is that going to mean that our, the number of people we have deployed on a particular project comes down? Yes, it will. And we're already seeing that. When we work with our clients today, so let's say, we were earlier looking at a year-on-year efficiency of 10, 15%. Today, that graph drops to 25% and then further. What does that mean for our industry? I think it means, and we're happy to do that, because what it is also doing is it's opening up more avenues for us to work. It's the story of technology, right? Technology is a deflationary force in an otherwise inflationary world. So technology across has been this kind of power, but yeah, we're embracing it. We're embracing it, adopting it, and it is going to create more opportunities for us. And it drives value for our customers here and now.
Rahul.
Everyone will become product manager who can code or a salesperson.
Yeah.
And to answer Gaurav, the customer should own the product management and taking the right decision, not the multiple partners. It will never work. And to add to Neil's point, that's where the leadership or the team internally have to empower, let people fail, let people learn, continuously evolve, and achieve the new capabilities. And that's why a lot of good grads or new universities, people don't want to join telecom. They love to join Webscaler, they love to join any other company, but they don't join telecom. And hence, we are the byproduct of the people we incubate and get, because they see no skills, they see no technology going to production, they see nothing happening in telecom, and hence we will keep coming to this debates and talk about all these things.
Right. Just want to come to Mark, and it's probably the final question, because very soon there's going to be a bus driver downstairs getting very irate or picking up people on the street wanting to go somewhere else. So, Mark.
And I'm not sure I should ask this question. It was kind of in response to Rahul's response to Francis, but in that ecosystem that you described, I'd love to hear the panel's considerations on, therefore, the security, data integrity, data sovereignty, lead, I say, in that, because I'm hearing it and alarm bells then started going off in my head about where does that data sovereignty lie, or how do you protect that data sovereignty and that and data integrity in that sort of in the world that we're talking about here that's been envisaged from this panel.
And do you mean who's responsible for it?
Who's responsible? Who owns it? Where does it lie? Especially if you're using a mixture of LLMs and SLMs, an agentic sort of model. So, said it again. There you go.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, it was just to make you laugh. Right?
Mark, who makes the money?
Sorry?
Who makes the money out of the customers?
That's a whole different workshop.
So I personally believe that we focus a lot of things to make things complex. Data governance, data security is one of the things the moment we say yes to any cookie, it's already out there. And whenever we log into public Wi-Fi, it's already out there. But coming back to the thing, I think customers trust telcos a lot. I mean, I think after banking or before banking, telcos is the most trusted brand out there. I mean, we share our personal life on telco. We call and think nobody's listening. So I think telcos should own. And that's why it's very important that most of the hiring we should be doing in telcos would be product managers who can code. Because they need to stitch those flows. They need to understand the value of their data. They need to understand what value they're providing to customers and what technology will solve that best. So personally, I believe that it's the interface between the customer and the technology, which is telcos.
So maybe from my side. So At the end, I agree with Rahul. It's actually the telco itself, right? The ecosystem for me is in charge of helping the telco create a sustainable, secure, and sovereign environment. But the telco is the one that provides the service to his customers, right? So at the end, it's his responsibility.
But, sorry, how can that sovereign environment be created when, you know, we in an earlier panel session, we said that telcos haven't got the muscle to be able to create the large language models. So it's not a sovereign environment.
But that's what I'm saying. So the sovereign, you know, there are billions of definitions of what is sovereign, actually. I think that there is a huge conversation about it in multiple forms currently. Is a sovereign mean that it's somebody in a specific location or resident in a location, where the data is located and so on and so forth. But when I'm looking at it in a very generic way, if I provide or one of the values that I see with telcos providing to their customers is being able to provide them a sovereign environment, right?
We all want to get on the bus.
Well, I think we need to think about this as an entire panel by itself or session by itself next week around data ownership, responsibility, blah, blah, blah. So unless there's anything to add from Laura or Jeet on this, I think we probably need to call it a day there on this panel. But we went down lots of different avenues, but that's why we have this kind of from the floor discussion as well to open up ideas and not just stick to predefined questions, which I think we didn't have one all day, and that just goes to show how much interest there is from the room. So all credit to you all as well. But if we can give our panel a round of applause. Thank you very much.